I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from the book of Acts, chapter 5. Let's focus on verses 12 through 14. Many signs and wonders were being done among the people through the hands of the apostles. By common consent, they would all meet in Solomon's colonnade. None of the rest dared join them, but the people praised them highly. Believers were added to the Lord in increasing numbers, crowds of both men and women. There's a growing movement in the church called the home church movement. I know a lot of folks that are into it. People seeking a more intimate worship experience are meeting in homes. And one of the arguments that home church leaders give to support their ministry model is that the early believers always met in homes. But today's passage addresses that assumption. Now, personally, I don't have a strong opinion as to whether the home church movement is good or a bad thing. On one hand, it seems a bit odd and cultish whenever people depart from the norm and isolate themselves. Questions start to arise. Who holds these groups accountable to the word, right? The question of how are we going to accommodate growth and still feel small, that's always looming. But on the other hand, I developed a growing grassroots ministry, Groundworks Ministry, started in my home. 7 years later, we had almost 2,000 people participating and meeting in little coffee houses all over Southern California. So my response to the home church movement is that I have nothing against small ministry as long as it doesn't intend to stay that way. And when God is working in the midst of something, it just grows. It grows to His glory. Doesn't mean that it all has to grow in one building and the building keeps getting bigger. It can grow, and spread, in various places all over the city. But the whole point is it's got to grow. And when it grows, it has to grow to His glory, right? What healthy Christian community growth should look like is a topic for another day. But in today's chapter, 2 myths of the early church are debunked. The first myth debunked concerns how the early church had all possessions in common. And while that was true very early on, it wasn't sustained for a significant amount of time. About as soon as everyone jumped on board with that communal idea, a couple named Ananias and Sapphira sought to exploit it. And then others followed. The Apostle Paul also rebuked some congregations for giving nothing at all. So even while he praised others who contributed to the ongoing ministry, he also rebuked those who were stingy. That's one thing. Everyone had everything in common. No, they didn't. Even Ananias and Sapphira, who were killed because they lied to the Lord about something that they were going to offer and yet didn't offer all of it. Even Peter told them, hey, you didn't have to give any of it. But once you say it's going to go to the Lord, well, that's between you and the Lord. The second myth centers on how the early church always met in homes. And while it is true that many believers met in homes, the Bible's very clear that in the beginning, the apostles, along with other faithful and bold believers, they all met every day at the temple complex. And those who met in homes initially were just those whose fear overrode their boldness to testify and to publicly identify with Jesus and the other believers. Now later, with intense persecution and the eventual destruction of the temple in 70 AD, all believers had to meet in homes, or elsewhere they had to meet in secret. And so did the Jewish community, because when the Romans tore down the temple, they were trying to drive them out of the country. Eventually, followers of Jesus built their own little synagogues, or churches as they came to be known. And still, it was the bold proclamation of the gospel, accompanied by the Spirit's powerful displays, that acted as the growth engine of the early church. So let today's passage be a challenge for us to move beyond our holy huddles and to unashamedly proclaim Jesus. For the same reason that we cannot return to Eden, we can't return to those days which immediately followed Pentecost. Today is a new era, and it demands first century boldness. Battles are not won by retreating. They are won by boldly and yet gracefully and faithfully advancing the gospel and the Lord goes before his people. God is on the move, by the way, and so let's get moving forward. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Groundworks Ministries operates entirely through financial donations from faithful people like you. And yes, we do need your monthly support, especially now. Donating is secure and it's easy at our website, groundworksministries.com. You know, another way to help is just tell people about Groundworks Ministries. Share these podcasts with your friends and family and on your social media. And of course, you can always direct folks to our website, groundworksministries.com.